A lot of people are very passionate about their Apple Watches, which Godspeed. I mean, that's, everybody's got to be passionate about something.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Basic AF. This is a mostly tech podcast, and we're going to put the mostly to work today, I think, with this episode. I am Tom Anderson, and as always, joined by Jeff Battersby. Hello, Jeff.
Tom Anderson, good morning, and welcome to a very snowy Northeast. I am a mere 60 miles from Manhattan, and I've got 1.5 inches of snow on the ground. Who expected that? Not me.
You can have that. We've been chilly, but no snow. It's 80 last week, 45, 42 yesterday, but I think 50-something today, 70 Monday. So after all this rain, allergies will kill us all.
Awesome. Look at us. Two old men talking about the weather. That sounds
what
like
else do
a
we
great
have?
podcast.
We just need a park bench.
Yeah, and a chess set, which we can do something with that. All right, Tom, we want to jump right into this. We do have a guest today, who we will introduce shortly. But we did want to follow up on the last episode that we had. We talked about Gentler Streak, which, by the way, I still am liking quite a lot. But we got an email from Katarina Lotrick, who's the CEO and co-founder of Gentler Stories, who is the creator of the Gentler Streak app. And she wanted to give us an update on why the pricing was so wonky. And so she sent us an email, was very grateful to have herself or their app on our show. And she said about the funky App Store prices. Yes, that is the App Store thing. As an app, as you grow, you're also changing pricing, sometimes even business models, and then you do discounts, special offers, introduce new plans, etc. And you have to have all these prices visible on the App Store, as that ensures transparency for users on various plans. Just thought I'd shed some light on this App Store Frankenstein monster. So, Katarina, we're grateful for that. And yeah, we kind of assumed it was a whole weirdness with the App Store where it's not easy. And we do appreciate transparency. And I'm going to say again, I've been using this app now for several weeks. And particularly with regard to sleep, I really like how well the app explains why I'm not getting good sleep or why I feel tired when I wake up in the morning, which is perhaps just a function of my old body falling apart. Anyway, thank you, Katarina. Really appreciate it. And thank you for updating us on the whys and the wherefores of the weird App Store pricing.
Indeed.
Okay, Tom, we have a guest.
We do.
Very excited to have a guest. Very excited to introduce Leah Reich. Leah Reich will explain herself shortly. But Leah is a writer who I've been following for probably 10 plus years on a variety of platforms about a variety of things. And she's here with us today. So Leah, welcome to the Basic AF Show.
Hi, guys. Thank you. Nice
You're
to be
welcome. Here. Thank you for showing up. So why don't you, first of all, tell us who you are, what you do, and you currently have leahreich.com. Which is I believe leads just to a ghost. Is that what it is? A ghost?
Well, it's sort of now I just moved my website over. I was on Squarespace, but I figured I would just port it all over because you can create some separate pages and there's not much else on my website besides about me and links to my other writing and my newsletter, which is called Meets Most.
Okay.
But hello, I am Leah. I'm a writer and a researcher. I live in New York City. I am currently on a little bit of a sabbatical from working in tech for a long time to work on some writing, working on a book proposal, hopefully getting that finished up and out the door soon. And I live with a 15-pound cat who is much more liked on the internet than I am. He's very popular.
Well, cats do win the internet, I think.
Yeah, he's also sort of like he turned 10 last weekend, actually a week ago. And he has been sort of a presence for many people for 10 years. He's great. He's a good dude. But so I mean that's I'm happy to tell you more, but that's the rough sketch.
Okay, so you have your newsletter, which is essentially what goes out every week, once a week on a Wednesday, which kind of follows suit with a previous way that you were doing it. Might want to ask what it is about Wednesdays that is so special to you, other than it being the middle of the week.
So there was no reason. Like, I don't love Wednesdays personally, although I know in Mean Girls on Wednesdays we wear pink. That is not why I chose it. So what happened was in 2014, I think, was it 2014? Yeah, it was the end of 2014. I lie. It was 2013, I think. I had been interviewing for a job I really, really, really wanted. It was an editor position at a publication I will not name, for a new section they were launching, and I was just really excited about it. And I interviewed, and I wrote a whole brief, to write a brief explaining what you would do, what kind of writers you would invite, how you would envision the section. And I had really wanted this role. I was working at a small startup in tech, and I just didn't really want to be back in working in tech that much after I'd finished my PhD. And I, made it all the way to the end of the interview process, and then they hired someone else. Mm-hmm. And I was really disappointed. And I went to I was seeing a therapist at the time, and I had this whole I'm going to show them, and I'm going to write all this, publish. They're going to know they made a mistake. It was very, that. And she said, that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. Why not maybe do some writing because you love writing? Why not write for the love of writing? And I was like, nobody ever does that. That never works for anyone. It was very, whatever. I was really just wanted to kind of I just wanted to fuel myself with spite more than love at the time. And she said, well, just try it. Try doing some writing for the love of writing. And so I said, I promised her I would. I said, okay, fine, I'll do something. And this was right before the new year. And then, in the new year, January 1st rolls around, and I said, I promised I would do something. And I am someone who, I know myself, and I know that if I have no accountability to someone outside me, things won't get done. I love external accountability and structure. I thrive with those sorts of, constraints. And, so I thought, well, I made a little Medium, I said, I'll write something on Medium, and I'll write every week. I'll put it out there so I do it, because if I don't do that, I won't do it. And I thought, well, I'll start this weekend. And then I was like, oh, here we go already. No, you will not start this weekend, because if you don't, just do it now. It's the first of the year. Just do it now and do it once a week. And it's a Wednesday. So just do it once a week on Wednesdays. And that's how I started it. And I also realized that year there were 53 Wednesdays, which also really was let me tell you, writing 53, at the time I was much more into writing much, much more personal stuff, more personal essays and stuff like that. And I didn't really know what it was going to be. I just thought, write something once a week. And I would say for the first 6 to 9 months, it was real crapshoot. It felt like I was workshopping my writing. And then by the end of the year, I felt like I sort of got into a better rhythm, but it was a long time ago, 10, 11 years now. And I just did it on Wednesdays. And then it just became a thing where Wednesdays were the day that I sent them out, often the day I wrote them as well, or posted them. And that series is called A Year of Wednesdays, and which someone else wrote. They titled a book A Year of Wednesdays. It came out well after who knows, maybe they
stole from you.
Probably not. I think there are very few ideas are original, but also what can you do? I didn't think to publish a book about it. And so when I started on this newsletter that I have now called Meets Most. I got laid off from Instagram, Meta, in 2023. I was part of the big wave of layoffs. And Meets Most comes from the performance review process that you go through at Meta.
Interesting.
Yes, I explained it in one of the earlier newsletters. I'm happy to talk about it if it's that interesting. But anyway, I kind of started it right after I got laid off. I wrote for a while, and then I kind of lost my momentum, and I was working at a contract job, and a lot was going on, so I didn't really pick it back. And so I decided to pick it back up this year and really commit to it and be consistent. And so I thought Wednesdays, why not?
Okay.
Why not do it again? And also this year, New Year's Day also happened to fall on a Wednesday again. So
53 this year too?
I didn't count.
Why'd you have to bring that up, Jeff?
Yeah, because that's
I trust me, I thought about it. But then I thought, you know what? If you really are going to be consistent and stick to it, you'll probably do it beyond this year anyway. So don't worry about how many, just do it.
So a quick question with that on Wednesday. Are you still, how's your writing schedule? Are you better now at writing ahead of time and just publishing it Wednesday? Or are you right up? Because the reason I ask is I've got a small newsletter that I do. And honestly, I dread doing it, but I still do it because I think it's good for me to do it. But I've tried to develop a way to kind of get ahead of it. And because part of it is news, so it's Apple related. And so part of it is news, but part of it I try to do like something to help someone learn something that they might not know how to do. And so but even if I have a list, and it goes back to what we were talking about pre-show with me being an organizer, it's like, well, I can't write it because it's not organized yet.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh God, I'm a Thursday, every other Thursday. And I'm like, oh shit, it's Tuesday. I gotta get this done.
I would love to say that, yes, I'm way more organized. No. But also in my personal defense, my newsletter, the way that I view it is a little bit different from, I don't have it. It's not like I want to, because I think if there's a specific thing you want to do and you want it to be like, I want to research it, I want to do this, I want to, give something, I think then I would also feel the same. There are days when I'm like, oh no. I mean, this Wednesday, I didn't know what I was going to write about until like 4 p.m. and then that whole thing came out in like 2 hours. When I realized what I wanted to write about. I'm also working on a book proposal, so that is my priority. And the newsletter for me is more right now, at least this year, is a space for me to play with some of the ideas that I want to write about in the book that I'm hopefully going to write. It's sort of a more kind of a less defined space. It's not news. It's not deep dive. I'm not trying to do a lot of big research. It's more like a thinking and writing and more of a playground space for me, which is why people pay for it, which is so lovely, but a lot of people, it's free for most people. And I don't want to have it be paid right. I don't want to have it paid as a requirement right now because it doesn't feel fair, because a lot of it is me just thinking through ideas and working on them and sort of tinkering with them. I also am someone who does, this is going to probably sound weird, but I do a lot of my writing in my head. So I've in the past I wrote probably 10 years ago now, wrote a letter of recommendation for the New York Times Magazine it's on ant bait if you need it. But it's about killing ants, but it's really about how killing ants is very much like dealing with anxiety. And I wrote it in my head. Like I kept thinking through how I was going to write it so that when I sat down to write it, the whole thing came out in like 3 or 4 hours. I just typed it all out and kind of pieced it together. And so I do a lot of stuff like that. Like I think a lot. So a lot of times when I feel like I'm not doing anything, I'm like, my brain is sort of piecing the stuff together, and then it will come out in one go. And I don't mean it's like great, like, wow, perfect, no one needs to edit it, it's great, but it's more like a lot of the kind of fundamental chunk will come out. So I kind of am okay if I just write it and send it on Wednesdays, because I'm thinking about it throughout the week. And if I don't have an idea, like this past week, I wrote called The Great Validation Pact it's one of my favorites that I've written so far this year, because
it's very good.
Thank you. It was a real deep realization that I think is super important, that I'm glad I had this realization before I wrote a book that the book that I want to write, because it's kind of a core aspect of what I want to write about. So yeah, I have a list too, but kind of some days it's like that's a space for me to play, whereas the book is a lot more structured, and the book proposal is a lot more organized and structured in a way that I don't always, unlike you, Tom, I do not excel at organizing. So it's nice to have a space where I can just like let loose a little bit and, you know.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I write as well. Have written for Macworld, a variety of other magazines over the years, and now based on a short story I wrote, I am working on a novel. I got picked up by an agent to write a novel based on a short story, and I am about 40,000 words into that novel right now. But I spend a lot of time just thinking about where it is and what it is that I'm doing while I'm writing. So I totally understand that, that way of thinking, thinking your way through things and then sitting down and writing it. You still have to do the writing and then the editing and the rewriting and the editing and the rewriting. Like I've explained to some people that, fellow writers that I work with, or we talk about our work with, and, I'm a very recursive writer. Like I'll write, and I just did this. Last 5 chapters I'd written, each one of those chapters I've written kind of recursively. I go back and rewrite it and kind of build it all the way up until the final chapter. And then I went back through 5 chapters and did the very same thing. So, but a lot of that is, standing in the shower, washing my lack of hair, and, thinking about what it is that I'm doing and coming up against like difficulty stuff that people would say were blocks, in the writing process. So I totally get the idea of having stuff written in your head. And then when you finally do have the opportunity to sit down, it's really just kind of letting that pour out. And then you rewrite it and re-edit it.
Did you know that Tolstoy rewrote War and Peace at least 7 times?
Oh my God.
By hand.
Can you imagine?
By hand.
I can't even imagine that.
And then his wife recopied it for neatness. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I'm listening to War and Peace right now. We are not going to get on that topic because we will never get to what you want to talk about. Can highly recommend the audiobook with Tandy Newton, just as anyone needs.
Okay. Tandy Newton is the one who is
Tandy Newton is the narrator of the one I'm listening to. It's a great translation, was recommended to me by a friend. Her voice is incredible. If you need 63 hours of audiobook listening, it highly recommend. But we can't get on that topic because then I'll start talking about also Trollope audiobooks. Anthony Trollope, a great English novelist, also from.
Okay, you send that information. We'll put it in the show notes, but we won't go down that path.
Yeah, I know. But he rewrote War and Peace. I think it was something like at least 7 times.
Can you imagine? By hand.
Wow. So
that's crazy.
Recursive writing, you're not the first.
I'm not. I didn't think I was.
I know. No, that's what I'm saying. You're in good company.
And I was going to pat myself on the back and say I was a genius because I was doing something nobody else has ever done before.
You can still do that.
Yeah,
you're still at this, kind of.
Yeah.
What I wanted to get to before we talk about your writing, and PhD in sociology, a couple of master's degrees under that. But what is it that you were doing, if you're allowed to tell us, with that kind of background at places like Meta and Slack and other places that you were working? What is it that they were hoping you would bring, or you did bring to the table for those companies?
So I worked at all these places as a user researcher. Could be.
Explain that.
Yes, I will. Well, I was going to say that one of the things about what I did is that unlike smarter disciplines like, say, data science or software engineering, who had the I would say perspicacity to rebrand themselves. Like, remember when everyone was just called programmers, and now they're like coders and software engineers, which coder sounds like cool and or did for a while, like, oh, sci-fi, and software engineer sounds like you want to give people a lot of money. Data science also, they were like, oh, cool, let's take 2 big words that seem like they're valuable and put them together. And then there's user research, which is If you want a career in which you spend 50% of your time explaining what your job is and why it's valuable, including to your own coworkers, I recommend user research. Um, it is also called design research, user experience research, it's a lot of different things. So what I did, and there are qualitative and quantitative versions of it. There are mixed methods versions of it. Really what you're doing is you are the kind of basic of it is you're working to understand how and why people use the product and the products that they do, but also what they're trying to do, and what they would like to be able to do in ways that they themselves can't always articulate. So you're kind of trying to understand what their own behaviors are, their needs, their attitudes, around the different whatever you're working on or whatever product that you may be kind of engaged to sort of improve or 2.0. And you want to figure out as a researcher, what could we do that would meet that need more effectively, that would, you know, be able to sort of function in a way that actually engages you to keep using the app because it like provides value that maybe you didn't even realize it was going to provide. Or it can be something as simple as like, does this flow make sense to you? Can you get through this okay? And that's kind of a lot of the qual work. And the quant work is a lot of measuring what was the impact of that? Did that work? Like, why was this successful? What worked for you? What didn't work for you? Understanding more broadly, like that, there's market research, which is looking at like, what are the behaviors in the market? What are the white spaces, green spaces? What are the white spaces? What are the opportunities? And then a lot of the product research is really understanding what's like, what are the needs that people have of this product at scale? How is this working? Why is this not working? What's going on? All that sort of stuff. So you're really understanding like the actual user behaviors, needs, engagement with that's not captured in your like telemetry and the data that you can measure as a company, right? Like if I use an app, you could see what I'm doing in the back end. You could measure that if you have the data pipeline, but you can't see where I'm doing it, why I'm doing it, what my experience is as I'm doing it, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, what could be better, why I may have given up on it, why I quit, why I joined again, why any of those, where I came, like why, all of that, how, why, where, when is much harder to sort of measure and understand. And that it's that sort of thing. I mean, like that's sort of like roughly what we do, but it's actually when you're doing really, really good user research. I not to inflate the importance of the role of user research, but really I think user research, when it's good, helps you think about the problems you're trying to solve in a way that you couldn't have thought about them before. I used to work with a really amazing product lead, and he said, when he's like, what I liked about working with you is that you told me how to think about a problem. I don't have the time to figure out how to think about the problem. I'm trying to manage all the product teams. I'm trying to do all this stuff, but you help me figure out how to think about the problem in a way that allows me to unlock different kinds of solution opportunities. And it's that sort of transformative, like, I want to shift your perspective away from just trying to fix it in this way to thinking about all of the different possibilities there are for ways you could fix it that actually are better in the long term strategically.
Interesting. So this is going to raise a cynical question for me. When you talk about user needs, and I'm going to put that into quotations, my feeling is the ideas that you're trying to work on, and maybe you were trying to avoid this in your position at these places, but it is a way to make that app or whatever it is that the user is interfacing with sticky. So they're always right. So that's the end goal. The end goal is... So what is it? How much of what you were doing actually relates to the needs, like legitimate human needs of the person that's using whatever app it is, and not strictly speaking, meeting the needs of the stockholders in the company.
It's a totally valid, I mean, it's not cynical. When I was a couple jobs ago, I came up with, I love a Venn diagram. Who doesn't? But I apparently don't know how to think in any other way. I'm always like, oh, it's like a Venn diagram. But I came up with a sort of way of thinking about product development that I think from the perspective of exactly what you're saying, which is the job of user research is to be, in a lot of ways, the voice of the user, to say, this is what people need. Like, this would actually make their lives better. This would make not just the experience of the product, but like, it might actually improve how they do their work or how they experience, whatever. It depends on what I was working on, right? Like how they're engaging with content that is meaningful to them, or like how they're, sharing stuff on Instagram. There are some ways that I think you really can get to like the deeper actual human needs in a way that is almost really satisfying to people. And I can tell you an example of that in a minute, but you are not the only element that goes into the product development process. There are like what I call the Venn diagram is there's three main pieces, right? There's user needs, there are product principles, and like engineering constraints. That's kind of what, what I mean? Like how we build and why we build and what we're building. And then there are, business goals. And in the intersection of the three of those, I think is where you find the best, what I call opportunity spaces, the best opportunity spaces for the product. Because cynical or not, I'm not doing research for the betterment of humanity. I'm doing research because a company is paying me to help them improve their product. And the goal ultimately is to improve the product. I think where my cynicism seeps in a lot more is that when you start to define how do we make the product better and what does success mean? Because success could mean less explosive stock market, viral, giant, just like, huge amounts of like metric soaring success. It could be smaller for the company and better for the user. Like you could balance those more, right? But we don't live in that world. Venture capital doesn't reward that. The stock market doesn't reward that. People want to hear about eternal, perpetual growth, which is wild because the only thing
and impossible in the end.
Well, the only thing that grows perpetually apparently is the universe. So maybe scale your ego down a little bit. And
cancer. I just wanted to point.
Right. I mean, that's right. There very few things grow forever. It's a cancer and the universe. And like, let's be honest, which side are we, closer to in this experience? Right. So I'm with you in that if you're going to make these products, there are ways you can make them that balance more of we do need to continue to exist as a company. We're not just doing this for altruistic purposes, which would be great if we could. But you can balance it more. And that's one of the challenges I ran into as a researcher, which is that I always wanted to balance it more in favor of the user, but especially at really large companies that are hell-bent on domination. It's hard to have that win out over what's, in the benefit of metrics and product growth.
Okay. Yeah. And thank you for that. I really appreciate the insight, especially for someone who's on the inside. I am cynical about many things, but that particular well, and here you are laid off from Meta. So
the example I was going to tell you about was one of the rare features that we built as a product team and we launched was hugely successful. I mean, crazy successful. I still sometimes ride the subway. I live in, I'm in Manhattan. I'll sometimes ride the subway and I'll see an Instagram ad and they're still using that feature along with like the other major aspects. It was a sticker called Add Yours. It's a
big one.
it was something that the team I was working with, we had a brainstorm session. It was based on an idea I had in that brainstorm session. It wasn't the only idea we worked on that half, but the more we built confidence in it, doing research, I did a lot of research on it. We did concept testing. I talked to a lot of people and, in interviews and concept tests. And I also built up some other ideas to help really like advocate for this, that what people were looking for was a way not just to share to each other in a sort of broadcasty way, but to really share with each other in the ways that human beings like to share.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we really advocated for this product. We wouldn't take no for an answer from leads. We wouldn't change it to be like what some of the suggestions they had. We really believed in it. We went to test it. We did a public test, and the public test actually had to be stopped because it hadn't been scaled enough. And the first time that people started using it, nearly 1 million people used a sticker. Wow. And it literally almost broke Instagram because the public test hadn't been built to scale that quickly at that much. And when it launched, a lot of people, even internally, but other people said this was the first time on Instagram that I ever felt like I was doing something with other people. And when this is an interesting example of qualitative informing. So it's a lot of qualitative research that I did that informed why we should build it, the way we should build it, the way we should create this sticker. And then after it was launched, a quant researcher did a bunch of research into understanding why people loved it so much. And 3 of the 4 main reasons that, in this big survey she ran, 3 of the 4 main reasons people loved this feature were 3 of the qualitative insights that I had used to drive it. And it was, you want to feel invited to do things. You want to feel welcome. You want to know that like what you're sharing is okay to share. You want to share with other people in a way that doesn't just feel like you're like sort of posting into a void and who knows what's going to happen. That it's like there's a sense of numbers and community and like well-being. And that is you can do that kind of work. It is possible. And it's possible this is my, I think the sad secret is that it's possible to build that and have it be hugely, hugely successful to the product itself, because when you build for like the benefit of people, that makes them feel good, right?
Oh yeah.
And they might want to use your product more, but you have to be willing to do that kind of work. And then yes, they did lay me off. So.
Congratulations on your success. It was
it's a lot. I have a lot of thoughts on that, but it was funny because I also during that time had started talking about how social media needs to design for what I called participation experiences rather than just like sharing or consumption or like, validating interactive experiences. And I had started talking about this around the same time, 2 years before, just about 2 years before I got laid off. And everyone said that the day they laid me off, they said there was going to be a big reorg. And one of the new reorganized groups teams was going to be focusing on participation.
So how long were you there?
Just about 2.5 years.
Okay. And how many reorgs did you go through in that?
I mean, my very first day, I joined and my manager, the first thing she said to me was, there's been a reorg.
Yeah.
So, in tech, there's like a reorg every
yeah. And my start was back in the 90s. So, and I watched one of your old talks on YouTube and you mentioned dial-up and the BBSs and everything. And I started at AOL in 1993 and I was call center, sales, billing, tech support, and then moved over to corporate because, once a company gets a certain size, well, we don't want our support folks here. We're going to send you to Florida. And then Florida ended up being Bangalore and all these different places. But probably, so everything was pretty stable from 93 to 96 maybe, but it was really growing because at that time, AOL was the internet. Right. There was Prodigy, CompuServe, those other ones, and that's our history lessons for the kids today. But
it wasn't the whole internet because I was on the internet and then I never used CompuServe, AOL, or Prodigy, and I was on the internet starting in 92. So
and so it kind of took it mainstream.
Yeah, that was the mainstream internet. But then there was those of us who were nerds.
Nerds. That's right. Yeah. And you have an AOL address?
Now, well, yeah, yes.
Now this come back to that.
Yeah.
But once we hit 96, 97, it was like every 18 months we'd have those, and they would lay off 200, and then they'd reorg, and they would hire 300. It's like, why?
Yeah.
It's like, you have good people here that have proven, if you want to cut dead weight, fine, because not everybody is a fit. But yeah, so that I got cut from there in 1999. And then went back in 2000 and stayed until 2007. So I saw kind of the AOL go up and then the AOL go down. And I was like, I'm out. But it all kind of turned with the Time Warner merger there for them. And they refused to acknowledge that broadband was going to be a thing and did not pivot to anything. But anyway.
Yeah. My layoff from Instagram was the fourth layoff of my career. I got laid off once in the 90s, once in 2001, and then once from a startup, like right before I started, actually at the end of the year Wednesdays, I think, and then this last one. So it's like, I feel like I'm averaging like every 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Which it follows the cycles of the industry, and this past cycle has been very interesting for layoffs because, speaking of user research has been gutted across the industry. I think there was someone wrote a blog post about this. I don't know where it is exactly. I'll look for it. But there was a blog post that said at one point after the sort of layoffs started in 2020. So Meta's did their first big round. You remember and I remember they got on and they said, oh yeah, we're doing a really deep cut because we don't want to do this again. It was like 13,000 people got laid off in 2020, November 2022. And they were like, we don't want to do this again. It was really, big, or 11,000, 13% or something like that. Anyway, and then like 4 months later, they were like, just kidding. We loved it. Actually loved it. It turned out really well. So we're going to keep going. And then of course the stock price soared to like previously unknown, because what does the stock market love? Human sacrifice.
Yes.
It really does. Because it turns out you can waste $45 billion on the metaverse and still have your stock price go to like $700, as long as you lay off a bunch of people. And so I think what was interesting, though, is that user research during those layoffs, and Meta started it, and I have some theories on why, and then the rest of the industry follows suit. But across the industry, at some point, job listings for user research specifically were down 89% from their peak in 2021. And even though people would say like, oh, well, the same, yes, but like a lot of user researchers got laid off from Meta, but the same number of software engineers got laid off. One cannot look at total numbers. One needs to look at percentages, right? The ratio, how many software engineers work at Meta and how many got laid off versus how many user researchers work versus those who got laid off. And it has been really like a very interesting inflection point that has not shifted back, where, there's this, the industry has really shifted away from it right now, which is interesting in an industry that wanted to be very user centric. Much harder to find those roles now. Very hard, actually.
Interesting. So, speaking of Venn diagrams and your love for, this kind of brings up what is very interesting to me about your newsletter, is that it kind of hits that spot in the Venn diagram where we've got a product and we've got a user, and you're talking a lot of times about the need that it is or is not fulfilling. One of the things that I've talked to Tom about, I do currently wear an Apple Watch. I got one a couple of years ago, and I am still ambivalent about this thing that's on my wrist for a variety of reasons. And oftentimes I feel like many of these companies are creating products in search of a need, as opposed to seeing a need and creating a product that kind of takes care of that. And that is one of the things I feel. I never wore a watch in my life before this. I'm not a watch wearer, have never been a watch wearer, and may not be a watch wearer after this one. The battery dies on this one. But you had in one of your newsletters episodes, we don't need no innovation. And I sent that one to Tom and said, hey, I think we should try to get you on. And see if we can get you on the show. Tom's response to this, and he'd be fully willing to fess up to this, is, yeah, right. Well, why doesn't she just get rid of it?
I did.
Which you did, in
Which you
fact.
did. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were listening to Tom through the ether. But talk to me a little bit about your experience. You don't have to, rehash that particular piece, but talk to me about what it is that you felt that wanted you or had you putting that on your wrist, and what it is that made you get rid of it in the long run, and kind of what was or wasn't being met by having tech strapped to your arm.
I mean, a lot of people are very passionate about their Apple Watches, which Godspeed. I mean, everybody's got to be passionate about something. And I don't want to take away from it, because I know people do get value out of the
absolutely true.
And I don't mean to say like, oh, this is the stupidest thing ever invented and it's garbage and no one should like it. It was more that I was ambivalent also from the start. Just full disclosure, I just think it's just aesthetically very displeasing. It just looks like a big black square on your wrist. And for me, I care about the aesthetics of things. And it's interesting that a company like Apple, which historically for many years has been very driven by, in part, obviously it's driven by a lot of things, but the aesthetics of design and of functionality are obviously hugely important to Apple. And I think the Apple Watch is just no matter what you put it in, it just is sort of ugly. I got it because I really wanted to, it was for fitness tracking primarily, right? I really wanted to use it as, I looked at all the different fitness trackers. I wanted to get myself moving more. I wanted to be able to track what was going on with fitness and maybe even sleep, because I wasn't sleeping. We don't need to get on all of the details of health and all of that. But at the end of the day, I thought, I looked, I was like, should I get a Garmin? Should I get a Fitbit? Should I, the Oura, everyone's all of these things. And I was like, the Oura ring, I wear rings and I don't like the way the Oura ring, and also it really was good for sleep more than fitness. And the Fitbit, I was like, I don't know. And anyway, it was sort of a lot of fine, I'll just get an Apple Watch. I'll just do it. Right. And at first I was like, oh, I do find value in it. I didn't it's not the whole time I didn't find value in it, but I got the Apple Watch. I didn't get one with cellular because I also was number one, so much more expensive. I think it would have been slightly less ugly to me because I could have gotten gold. I'm a gold person. I could have made it maybe match a little bit more. And then, I was the cellular is so much more expensive. And then if you're going to get the stainless steel, it's what is it? $1,200 watch. And I have to pay $10 a month to get it on my phone plan. Right. So now I'm all of this money. So I thought I'll just get the regular one. And then I realized, oh, well, now I can't leave my phone at home. Right. So now I'm tethered to two devices rather than less tethered to the one that I want to be less tethered to. Even if, I tried to remove as many alerts as possible, but it turns out my email, I get so many stupid emails from no matter how many mailing lists I try and get off, it just feels I feel like for every one I get off, somehow I've joined 5 more without realizing it. And so I would get 1,000, my email, just buzzing on my wrist constantly, where I just felt slightly crazy. Because I thought, well, if I turn off email, then, and essentially what I have is a very expensive fitness tracker and easy Siri timer. I was I could set a timer really, but I loved it. I was set a timer. I'd just be but I could do that on my phone. It was a little bit easier at the gym. If I wanted to set a timer, I could just in my headphones say, hey, Siri. And I, wasn't yelling into my phone.
Right.
And the fitness timer was great. I really liked it, but what I also noticed was that as someone who is very easy to market, number one, you can market literally anything to me. I can be like, that is the ugliest shit I have ever seen. And in 6 months, I'd be like, but I might want to wear it. Genuinely don't know what is wrong with me. When I did my PhD in UC Irvine, and so I lived in Orange County, California for 5 years. And in the first year, about like 9 months in, this was in the early 2000s, so it's a little bit different vibe. But there was this period where I was like, what I really want is a silver Mercedes coupe and a solitaire diamond ring. Two things I'd never really been interested in my life. And then one day, like I woke up and I was like, oh my God, it's really like, I'm just marinating in what these like
in LA.
Yeah, I was marinating in that like Southern California vibe, which is not to cast aspersions on it, but like I'm just very susceptible to that. And so things like streaks and rings and closing them and the stand, don't get me even started on that fucking stand thing. Literally, I set it for the minimum number of stands. I would walk around my apartment waving my arm for 15 minutes and it wouldn't register. And I was like, this is making me crazy. You can't choose which rings. And then I did like that, like it got me to move. I liked that it did some things, but over time I was like, I feel like I care more about tracking than I do the activity I'm doing. And it felt like it was distancing me more from what mattered and getting me to focus on, it's like, this is also kind of how I feel about Duolingo, which I do religiously and pay for. And I love languages. I've spoken different languages my whole life. Literally since I was a baby, I had 2 languages as my first language when I first started speaking. And so I've always been a language person. I love languages, but in Duolingo, I will find that I'm like more interested in like getting a bunch of points and maintaining my streak. And I want to be in the diamond turn. What the fuck is the diamond? What am I going to do? Go to France and like not be able to like order at a restaurant, but I will say I was in the I mean, I never,
Yes.
like I go to Italy and I can say 4 words. I mean, I can say a phrase in, what Portuguese and Korean, but what is most important is that I never broke my streak on Duolingo. And that started to get me to feel like, oh, you're focusing, like, why are you focusing on something that doesn't matter rather than the thing that really makes right? And I think it's also, so one of the things that really interests me about tech and the ways in which we engage with tech is that we know that products are designed to make us want to keep using them. We know they're sticky. And it is also it's also a decision we can make to say, it's the same with social media. Do you want to get a bunch of likes and like catch up with people in a really like sort of superficial way? And it's not like I've made a ton of friends online. A lot of my friends have been made since I first got online in 1992. I still know people I made friends with in 1992 on the internet. But do we want to have that sort of superficial interaction? Do we want to close a ring, maintain a streak? Or do we want to do the thing that provides value, that makes us feel like we're doing something meaningful in our lives? And like, for me, I was like, the watch just feels like I'm now tethered to another thing that I don't, like I could move. I could get the exercise. The exercise is the same whether I track it or not. And I don't mean like, look, some people really love data. They love tracking things that brings them joy. So, and I think then people get mistaken for like, it's the device that brings me joy. No, it's the act. You love data. It's okay. Some people love it. I would like to love getting exercise, moving, feeling good, being outside. And even if the watch helped me do that, I felt like I was just more beholden to it than the actual act of going outside.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to the Venn diagram, because I've got the activity and I've got the tracking, and kind of that sweet spot is like, well, it encourages me a little bit if I'm feeling lazy, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But, I've got a streak that, speaking of the streak, it is ridiculously, stupidly long. But just like you were saying with your Duolingo, it's the same thing. It's like, oh my God, it's 2,800 something. I don't want to lose that.
Right.
But it doesn't mean anything.
What are you
It means
losing?
nothing.
Right. What are you losing? Nothing.
Right. Nothing. I think I'm losing my mind is what it is.
Right. I mean,
But
right,
yeah, and go ahead.
no, it's exactly that, Tom. I think like that's the most interesting thing to me is this feeling of like, I don't want to lose the streak. And it's like,
Why?
Why?
Mm-hmm.
And I think for some people, there is the feeling of if I lose the streak, I feel like I'll start falling off and I'll slide back into my old habits.
Right.
And I understand that. Like, I don't want to discount that because I felt it. I definitely feel like the watch got me to move more, or at least to, but I don't know if it did because I was like, was it just that I would track it more, and I think that like this, I understand, like, I don't want to lose a streak because, I'm worried that I'll go back to bad habits or I'll slide or I won't do as consistently. It helps me. But I just feel like the idea of this, like one day of losing the streak you're going to, right. But this feeling of like the streak and the rings and I want to do, like, I can't lose it. It's like, it just makes me feel it makes me feel like it's like, what are you losing?
It's not the right focus.
No, yeah, you are. I do feel like I'm losing my mind more than I'm going to lose something else.
Right. Because what is my end goal is to be active, to stay healthy, especially as in my mid-50s almost. And so that's the goal, is to stay active, mobile, maintain strength.
Right.
The rings don't really matter. Mm-mm. But it's like, oh God, I still have to close it. It's 7:30. And so there is that friction there. And it'd be interesting to see where that flips, because I think we all start, oh, this is great. This is going to keep my habits going. It's a nice reinforcement. And when I first started with the watch, I bought the very first one. And when I started with it, I didn't care that much about it. Like, it was great because I came from Fitbit, which really didn't track anything other than steps. And I was like, oh, this is great. But if I didn't close it every day, I didn't care.
Right.
I would work out the days I was supposed to work out, and I would do my recovery things the day I was supposed to do that. And if it closed, it great. If it didn't, it didn't. But then somewhere along the line, it said, hey, Tom, 300 straight days, bro. You're doing great. And I was like, ooh, 300 is a lot. That's almost a year. I have to keep this going. And so I'm curious, like, where did that flip for me mentally? Because somewhere it did, because I used to not, and now I do probably more, well, definitely more than I should. And I don't know where that happens. Like, I'm sure it's different for everybody too, like with your streak with Duolingo. And, I started using that. And it's funny because the streak on the watch and the stand prompts and the coaching pieces and everything, come on, Tom, you can do it. When I tried Duolingo, it would send similar things with the little, I forget what the character is, the owl. Yeah. And I was like, Tom, disappointed or whatever it would say. And I was like, I don't give a crap. Shut up. And that one I didn't care about. So that's another interesting thing to dig into, is like, well, why didn't I care about that? Probably because I just didn't care about learning that particular language that much. This is something I've been interested in for 30 years at this point on the fitness side of things. But yeah, it's interesting, and it can be a bit much of a load.
Yeah. I don't know where the switch is, because I've had Duolingo for a long time, and I really only sort of was like, what I said was I want to commit to, like, I studied French in college. I've spoken Spanish for a really long time. I spoke Cantonese as a child. I started learning Mandarin as an adult, right? Like, I've spoken so many different languages and learned so many different languages. And so what I wanted was to, like, initially I was like, I want to go back. I want to, I speak Spanish, but like sometimes my vocab and my verbs, because I haven't studied it in a long time. So I want to use it to, like, get better at French and Spanish, which I used to speak, and like beef those back up and maybe like pick up some other stuff. And I think I had started Duolingo probably when I was living in Sweden, and I was trying to, like, I was taking classes and I was trying to learn Swedish and everything like that. And when I went back on it recently, and now I started this streak where it's like over 800 days now or something. It was because I wanted to commit to engaging in languages, because that gives me joy. I love talking, period. If it's not that obvious. But I love being able to connect with people in their own language. It makes me really happy. I would rather be uncomfortable and like stumbling around if someone else is comfortable. It's just, and also I just feel like you get to learn more when you're engaging in another language. And like, I did it for these really very human reasons. And now I'm like, I got to earn 1,000 points 800 days later. Right. Like, and I don't know where that switch happens. And I don't know why it matters. And I am really fascinated by it, right? It's like this thing where I start to think much more about, am I really learning French, relearning French? And I do think I am. Like, I think I know I've learned, I've picked up a lot of stuff. It's not that I'm not learning. It's not a waste of time, but it's the focus. It's the way my brain prioritizes and cares more about this aspect in the moment, where I'm like, I should put the phone down. I've done a couple lessons and actually work on something that's important, but I'll stay on the app for another half an hour to like earn more points. And it's that part where I just think like, what are you doing? And I think that's where part of me is also really curious about, what are the decisions that we make as autonomous adults who fully aware of the effect these products have on us, the impact they have on our lives, the ways we engage. Like, I literally work on products. Like, I know I'm more interested on so one of the things you said, Jeff, earlier was that this sort of intersection of the product and the user. I find that a lot of tech writing and writing about tech tends to focus on the companies, the products, the executives, the money, the industry. And there's very, 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 very little focus on us, the people who use the product, even the individuals who like help make it on a lower level. And like, the real impact of all of the big stuff is how it impacts us as human beings, our societies, our relationships, our everything. And that's really where I get like, what choices do we make? And, is the call coming from inside the house?
Yeah. And that's a great segue. This is what you will find in Leah's writing. If you check out her website, which I'll have you tell us about in just a second. To the end of what you were just talking about, Leah, one of the pieces I'll highly recommend is Ungamify Your Brain, which is exactly what you're talking about right now, and that kind of stuff. But why don't you tell us where we can find you?
Mm-hmm. www.leahreich.com. First name for someone born in the 70s, a lifetime of princess. And last name, a lifetime of the Nazi joke you really want to make. I've heard it. Please don't.
Yeah, I won't.
Not
That's
you.
why I asked you how to make sure.
Oh my gosh, just honestly, what a last name to be saddled with for decades.
Yes.
It is my name, but it's
stuff like, is your middle name third?
Are you the third in your family?
Yeah.
Right. Wow. Never heard that, guys. So yes, leahreich.com. You can find more of my writing there. You can find my newsletter. You can say hi. Jeff likes Ungamify Your Brain. I have two that are pinned on the top underneath a little about me. One is technology is not the answer, and one is the one I wrote this week, which is the Great Validation Pact.
Yeah, highly recommend those both as well.
Thank you.
And pretty much everything. Like, I'm not lying when I say that your writing is excellent, and I really appreciate it, and it makes me think. And you're one of the few writers that I send to a lot of people. So
that's very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, so you're welcome. Well earned. It's not. I'm not just saying this because you're sitting in front of Tom and me. So, Leah, thanks so much for taking the time to come on. And actually, I would say we hope you would be willing to come on again.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Awesome. Really appreciate it. Alrighty. So that is the end of this episode of the Basic AF Show. As usual, our lead-in music and closeout music is Psychokinetics and Celsius 7. Highly recommend that you check them out. And Random Art Design has designed the seriously true-to-life robots that make up our... and Leah, you can look at us and know that artwork is not a joke. It's pretty much the real us. Yeah, I think it actually looks better than the two of us do.
There's
That's another story. Do the usual stuff. Like us, recommend us to your friends. Again, not that we pay a whole lot of attention to how many people are downloading our episodes. We kind of do. We're more interested in just hanging out with each other and talking. And if somebody else is interested in listening, that's a bonus. But Tom and I like hanging out with each other. And we really enjoyed hanging out with you today, Leah. So thank you very much. Really grateful.
We did. Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time on a Saturday. And hopefully it's a little warmer for you up there today. It's not, no, it's still just as cold. Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's honestly not a bad day for staying inside and podcasting.
Very true.
Well, we're very thankful that you spent some time with us. So thank you very much. So that is it for this episode. We will catch you all again in a couple of weeks. Until then, take care.
See ya.
I don't want to know about your imperfections, dude. Prefer to